I definitely believe that we need to incorporate more of the actual history into history education. There's no dispute there at all.
Okay,
If nothing else, just for a complete educational experience. There's really not a dispute either way on my part. It's just that I'm very touchy about anything that a significant portion of us use as an excuse to fail.
Right.
You know, a lot of people will say that, well, part of the reason we're failing is because there's no black education in schools. I find that to be complete hogwash. I mean, you don't need to know that. You should know that, and you should be afforded the opportunity to learn that. And I'm going to agree. I totally feel that you should get that. But that is not an excuse to fail. Because you just said most of the successful black people in America, whatever standards you want to use, is American standards maybe, but that's not on their mind. You know, it depends on what you want to do and what you want to do with it, the knowledge, you know. But it's not necessarily a fail or not situation. It is a situation that's just the right thing to do. We should have this as part of our history. Okay. In my opinion.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Slightly disagree with that. Based on your measure, based on what you define success as.
True.
If we define success on an individual level, then yes. But you know, the fact that our communities are in the shape that they are is partially because our expectations of what we expect from people when they get education is based on an individualistic model. So if, like, you know, even like us telling our family history, you know, when you say, well, Big Mom always said everybody needs to come together around the holidays and do this and do that. When that history is dead, then you just, you know, you still can be successful outwardly, but you're not successful in terms of, you know, the family structure and cohesiveness. So I think that it really just depends on how we define success. One, and then also, are we talking about history just in the sense of what are the important things, you know, from a global standpoint, or our personal history? Because that's important too, knowing our own personal history.
And I mean, I agree with that. I think both histories are important, and I would think, though, personal history is actually more influential than global historical history to any individual. You know, because like I said, you got that good family foundation, that's going to drive you.
But generally speaking, how many people actually have that good family foundation? It exists, clearly exists. I have it.
Yeah.
But, you know, I'm going to tell you, most people, and I do mean most people that I mention, that I meet, converse with, date, whatever, they come from and they were raised completely in broken.
I agree, but again, I'm wondering how knowing historical facts of what blacks did in, you know, 50 years ago to 300-400 years ago, how does that replace that, or how does that help or augment those people who didn't have what you had?
Well, now, if I can just jump in here.
Okay.
All right. Well, first of all, what we got to understand about history is it has to be more than a base level of knowledge, the regurgitation of facts. We have to begin to understand the importance of why things happen and the effects, positive and negative, of these occurrences. And I agree with Brother James. In a sense, knowing a wide scale of knowledge of history may not benefit everybody. I mean, there's some people that couldn't tell you who was the first president of the United States, so they can't tell you, you know, who is the leader of Nigeria right now. But that doesn't mean that it's not important in other aspects to other people. And then if we look at African history, and we really want to go in depth, each tribe, each country, each community all may have their own different, you know, history. They may have their own historical viewpoints of how things have materialized over the years. And so us as a people, even when we bring it down to a family level, sometimes we have to just start off with knowing our family history. You know, that has to be important. Like, whether you come, and I don't like terms like broken and good and nuclear and all of these terms that we use for family, because we're all family. You know, you got a mom, you gotta have a mom, you gotta have a daddy, unless you had a mom and you had a needle and some sperm. But we all gotta have some parents, you know, and so whether they're together or not doesn't mean anything, because at the end of the day, your mama still got a history, your daddy still got a history, your aunt got a history, your grandma got a history. Everybody has their own history. So when we start looking at our personal history, then like you said earlier, we can then draw a connection to those new stories when new people bring it to us. For instance, if I'm not a martial artist, but I know in my family that somebody practiced martial arts, my great uncle practiced martial arts. When you bring it to me, I then have a connection to you, not because I'm a martial artist myself, but because I know somebody in my family that did it. So I will take some special interest in what you're saying. Now, just to go out and just throw a whole bunch of historical facts at a person, you know, it may not mean a hill of beans to some people, while it means something to someone else. But like you said earlier, they do have to find that connection between themselves, their family, and then whatever the historical aspect is. Okay. Trying to draw me.
So history, like, and I think I want to jump on what you just said. History, everything that we learn is history. Math is history. It's trial and error. You know, these things are all history. And when we segment history, or when we alter history, or when we don't tell the full story, we're hurting ourselves. So it's not just hurting us as a people not to know our own history. It's hurting the entire world. So when Alexander the Not So Great went over and blew up the libraries in Egypt, he set humanity back thousands of years, because this was the accumulated knowledge of the entire world at that time. And so for him to blow that up, we're just rediscovering things about medicine. We're just rediscovering things about travel. We're just rediscovering things about technology that people have known for thousands of years. And that, we could have been so much further if not for the arrogance of a group of people. And so I think that, when we talk about things like Black History Month, things like that, it's not just for us. It is for us, but it's not just for us. It is history. And so when we take those things out, notice I'm talking a little bit louder, trying to get some energy in there.
Yeah, like
I appreciate that.
But when we deny history, we're denying the world of a full story. It's like me trying to tell a story of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and there are no dwarfs in it. It's not a full story anymore. Right. And so that's what we're doing. We're telling this story, because history, that's where I learned history, is a story to me. And we're leaving out the key elements. And so now, when we're walking through the woods, we had this history of man being able to tell what plants were good and what plants were bad, what animals can hurt us, what animals. And now we got to learn that all over again, because we don't have that in our history anymore. So.
Well, then, if we can kind of move this to the next point. And I mean, you bring up a good point. Because we have that altered history, it does cause a disconnect in our community, specifically for African Americans. But then you have to look at it like this. It was planned. Alexander Not So Great ran in, blew up the books, wanted to set humanity back. Same thing when you brought slaves over from Africa to the Americas. What you wanted to do, you wanted to erase their history, because you didn't want them to be able to reach back into a legacy and know, okay, this is not how things have always been. And a lot of times for people of my generation and younger, our history starts in 1492. It starts right there. It starts in 1604 with the first blacks being brought to Jamestown. It's hard for us to conceptualize a world pre-slavery. Hold on, let me give a shout out. Good. Shout out to Ancestry.com. You black, don't use it. Because you know what? They don't go back and tell you where you originally came from in your countries. And their commercials, they make me mad. So you know what? Ancestry.com, it's a wrap for you all. But going back to my point, if we don't know what we're good at doing, then we have to spend that much more time trying to figure out how we can be good at something. And that's double the work. And I think that's part of the overall game plan. So this lack of history, it does cause a disconnect and a confusion between us.
Okay. Something that you said, something you were implying. You were saying how basically, you know, if you're leaving out pieces of a story that you're not telling the full truth. Okay, cool. Another aspect, I'm a bit more direct. Some would say ruthless. You're pretty much being lied to, because there's no such thing. You can have a partial truth, but you can also have false truths. All right, and a lot of false truths are taught in your American history, in your American government history classes. I know from my own personal studies, which I didn't start doing until I got into adulthood, but from my own personal studies, almost everything that I remember, because I didn't really pay much attention to it because I wasn't interested in American history, everything I remember was a lie. Some of the stuff was part of the truth, but everything I remember is a lie. So I mean, like, even if, like what you were saying, you know, if we don't know what was going on, we can be set back. So these are things I feel that I could have known before. So my personal study, my personal knowledge, I could be even more knowledgeable about things now as I would be. I could be more knowledgeable about things now had I been taught it correctly in the past than I am now. Now, I'm a type of brother. You could say, you know, a secret knowledge. I just like to gobble up knowledge. You know, things. If I'm interested in it, I like to know about it. Okay, so this is only for my own personal thing. You know, I can have more knowledge than I do now, but I don't. So now I'm starting at a point that, to me, I think I'm behind. I think I'm behind in my history. I think I'm behind, and this isn't private knowledge. This is public knowledge. So one of my main issues is that, seeing that this is public knowledge, you know, generally speaking, anyone who picks up a book, they can look back at the school system and say, "You're lying to us." How is that still going on? How is that still going on? And how are we, as people, we know we're being lied to, but we still have so much faith in the public school system?
Oh, well, you know, that goes back to the Matrix. I mean, you know, you can either take the red or the green pill. You know, either you take the pill and you learn, or you sit down and you continue to look at the Matrix and think that it's reality.
But I mean, that pretty much is every aspect of government.
That's it.
I mean, this is just a very small subset of what we're being lied to about. This is a very small subset.
And the more I learn, the more I realize that.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, I don't think there's any disagreement amongst us that Black history needs to be a real part of history courses in education. For whatever reason, I mean, we may differ a little bit on the intent and the outcome of that, but I don't think, I'm pretty sure we all agree that real Black history needs to be incorporated into American history.
How? I guess the question is
that's
how.
where I was going. The next thing is solution.
Fell asleep and I had a dream. It was all black, everything. And it ain't no projects. Keeping it real's not an understood concept. Yeah, complexion's not a contest, cause racism has no context. Hip-hop ain't got a section called conscious. Everybody rapping like crack never happened. Crips never occurred, no bloods to attack then. Matter of fact, no hood to attack in. Somalia's a great place to relax in. Fred Astaire was the first to do a backspin. The Rat Pack was a cool group of black men that inspired 5 white guys called the Jacksons. Eminem fitted in, but then again he inspired a black rapper trying to mimic him. And that's who really rose up out of Michigan, a signed white rapper by the name of 50 Cent. You would never know what you could ever be if you never try, you would never see. Stayed in Africa, we ain't never leave. So it wasn't no slaves in our history, wasn't no slave ships.